All right, back here on One Bills Live, Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, and happy to welcome in now NFL on CBS Sideline reporter Evan Washburn, fresh off the AFC Championship game, and that was a difficult one for Bills fans to watch, not only because they had lost to the Broncos the week before in heartbreaking fashion, but they had to also watch the Patriots, their division rival, advance to a Super Bowl once again. But, Evan, there's bigger news here today, obviously, and that's with the hiring of Joe Brady, or the promotion from within, whichever way you want to describe it. What do you believe, because I know you've sat in meetings with Joe Brady before, getting ready for games and such. What does the hiring of Joe Brady signal to you in terms of what the brass felt was needed for this team to go further than they have the last several years?
Well, first of all, good to be with you guys. I would say the first word that comes to mind, just a different energy. And that's not to say Sean didn't have energy and didn't have an effective energy. Obviously, it worked at a high level for a number of years there and got this team to the precipice of a Super Bowl a number of times. But I would say in my experiences with Joe, he has a different energy to Sean. And obviously, some of that is rooted in his youth, his side of the ball that he's coached on, and just the way he seems to approach the job. So that will be a different energy for that locker room, for that building that you guys are so close to. And then beyond that, I think it speaks to what they want to get out of Josh Allen and to maximize every aspect of not just his game, but how they can tailor everything on both sides of the ball to allow him to continue to take this team to new heights. And maybe, I would say most importantly, try and take some things off of his shoulders so they can have a longer run with him.
Yeah, and one of the things we're thinking about is the completion of the staff. How many guys will be retained? How many won't? Certainly, Brady has a working relationship with everybody in the building. How that affects his ability to choose a staff and bring guys in. Offensive coordinator all of a sudden gets a spotlight on it. Well, we lost him.
There Steve, my thoughts actually went coordinator. Who's filling out that side of the ball? I mean, I imagine Joe's going to still call plays, so he'll be down on the field. And then, yes, he'll hire support staff or promote support staff on the offensive side of the ball in terms of a coordinator position in the game plan work that's done during the week when a head coach pulled away. But I want to know who's building out this defense. The personnel, you guys could probably speak to it better than I can, knowing the contractual situations, but is that being overhauled to some degree? And then who's calling the defense? Who's building it out? Because I know injuries were a big aspect to it, but to me, that's been in a lot of ways the last few years the hurdle that this team's needed to at times overcome. And I'm curious, as an offensive guy, and Joe, what's he going to do as a young guy in this first spot with all the game situation, the day-to-day, the CEO aspects of the job? I would think he needs somebody to run his defense where obviously he's engaged in what they're doing, but he can give that person total autonomy and ownership to, hey, you run it, you be the head coach of the defense. We'll connect early in the week to talk through keys, philosophies, style of game we want to play. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts, it's on you, man.
Right. And I don't see how we can get past what this says because, you know, Sean McDermott is moved out. Joe Brady is promoted from the offensive side of the ball. To me, this says they're fine with what the offense looks like. The changes have to happen on defense. Would you be surprised if there isn't wholesale changes on that side of the ball, staff-wise?
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if there wasn't a experienced defensive coordinator, someone who's maybe been a defensive coordinator or has been a head coach, whatever it's been that maybe brings some, not just experience, but the experience of running an entire side of the ball. And then ideally, maybe even some head coaching experience to help buoy Joe in areas where he's going to be experiencing things for the first time. I often think of conversations with Sean McVay the first time. Now, he was a little bit younger than Joe by about 5 or 6 years, but how impactful Wade Phillips was for him, because not only was he someone that he could trust to just run the defense and run it well, but also could lean on to be like, hey, I got this thing that came across my desk. I know you were a head coach at one point. What do you think I should do here? Have that type of, I mean, Ben Johnson had it in Chicago this year with Dennis Allen. Not necessarily a successful head coach, but a great defensive mind and a guy who's just been in the wars of being the head man. That, to me, would be the priority in terms of a hire on the defensive side in terms of a coordinator position.
Right out of the gate, you see, Joe Brady get tabbed to be the head coach, and at first glance it seems, well, they're not changing too much. And this is a team that has had a very high floor for a half a dozen years now, where you think, all right, they're going to win the division or be in the playoffs. This is a team that's going to get there. But at the end of it, for the last 6 years, with rare exception, the losses they've suffered in the playoffs have been like, that was a catch, not a catch. It was a fourth down spot here. It was a missed opportunity. It was a coin flip in this overtime game. These little weird, somebody else's fault kind of details that cause them to lose a game and end their season. And by the quirkiness of all of them, they all kind of start to look alike. What can, does changing the top guy without changing too much, is that kind of where you kind of try and thread that needle if you're the Bills front office?
It's a great question. It's a great sort of exercise in what this sport is and what makes it so maddening, but also for all of us covering it and those consuming it, extremely entertaining. All the things you described, I don't think a head coach has the ability to change one way or the other. I think when those amount of things pile up on you, and I think from what I could consume from afar was it just wears down a team. And now there is a quote unquote fresh start, albeit somebody who was a part of some of those heartbreaks. And I think that's also valuable too, that Joe, when he steps now to the front of the room as the head coach, for the guys that will be on this roster that have been a part of those things, and I think of the tent poles like Josh, now James Cook, and some of the guys on the other side of the ball, he can say, look, I've lived these things with you, but we're putting that behind us, and now this is a new version of the Buffalo Bills, and I'm going to take us in a direction through my approach day to day. Again, the energy, the personality I bring to this position, how I want you to attack it, and then from the schematic side of things, we'll wait and see how those things play out. But I don't know if there's a way with a coaching hire, whether it be head coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, hell, even quarterback. I don't think that can change some of the just unfortunate things that have stood in the way of this team advancing to where I know they want to be.
And then knowing Josh Allen was a part of the interview process, to what degree we'll probably never know, but we know he was partaking in the interview process. How does this hire reflect on him in what is somewhat of a unique arrangement?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I hope that there will be some transparency over the next maybe days, weeks, and as we get to understand the Joe Brady era and what went into making him the head coach, just how much Josh did impact this decision. Because if there isn't some transparency and some clarity given by those in charge, whether it's Brandon Beane, Joe himself, or Josh, it's going to lead to speculation. And on the surface, it would appear that if Josh was involved in the interview process, that this is a guy that he would have wanted to be his head coach, because from all I understood, they got along really well, and he really liked working with them, and they were extremely effective. Josh won an MVP. In my mind, he was MVP this year, even though statistically he maybe didn't have the numbers. Just from the standpoint of what he had to do week in and week out, there was nobody more valuable. So if Josh decided and told Brandon, like, this is the guy I want, and Brandon was okay with it, and that's kind of how this went down, then yeah, he'll have to wear the ownership that comes with that, the responsibility of, well, you picked him, so now you two have to work together along with a lot of other people to make this successful. But if we don't know that, then I do think that that's going to be something that's going to be tagged on to Josh's expectations, which are immense to start with. Now it's, okay, well, you've kind of played de facto GM, or at least hiring protocol here. And with that, we're going to judge you in terms of the success of the overall team.
What's the first question you'd ask Joe Brady if you could?
What's going to be different with you as head coach to Sean McDermott?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, that's the real question here.
we would be remiss, Evan, if we didn't profile some of your adventures on the sidelines last week when the weather turned.
Steve, I was thinking of you, buddy.
I know you've been on the sidelines here in Buffalo. Steve obviously has done it as well. The frostiness of your hair was something super special. I'm sure you saw the memes on social media. I think they were comparing you to Martin Short's Jack Frost character from the movies. Yeah, I mean, you're right there, man. Yeah, I mean, it's not quite as spiky, but you're right there.
So I'm not wearing a hat, by the way, because my hair froze off. It still exists. It's just I've been out in the driveway shoveling, so we're still carrying the lettuce. Look, you guys, and I mentioned Steve because he's been on the sidelines for all those years, but you live in an environment where things change quickly, and that was as quick as it's changed in my experience. 12 years doing NFL sidelines, 14 total, where honestly, 9 a.m., we get to the stadium local time, so let's call it 11 Eastern. It's sunny, it's crisp, it's cool, and then as we get to the end of the first half, clouds roll in. We've been told there could be some snow, and this honestly goes to some of the play calling that everyone's getting on Sean Payton for. I don't remember any forecast that said second half it's going to dump on you guys and you're going to be living in a snow globe. We knew there could be some flurries, but as you all saw, it changed. It changed dramatically. And specific to the hair situation, I never wear a hat unless it's crazy cold, i.e. your wild card game against the Patriots where you blew them out. I rocked a hat in that game because it would have been unhealthy not to. But I was walking up and down the sideline, and I was getting these kind of funny looks. And eventually, I saw the guy I was working with. I'm like, "What's going on here?" He's like, "Well, your hair is frozen right now. It looks frozen." Yeah. And then eventually, we're getting ready to do the weather report, or do the reporting game. And so I get to a camera, and I kind of see my camera guy Jason kind of chuckling, and I said, "Do I look ridiculous right now?" And he gave me a smile, and then Rickoff said, "Like, don't touch your hair." Jim Rickoff, our lead producer, who you guys know, and I know Tasker knows. And then what happened after that was great. I mean, look, it to me that game became about the weather in the second half, so it was fun to be able to, and that is where, in all seriousness, like sideline reporters sometimes. We get a bad rap. People are like, "What are you doing down there?" That's where it really does matter, because you couldn't understand from the booth or from your screen or your home just how not only it was snowing, but the wind patterns were making it literally impossible to open your eyes depending on which way you were going. And as we saw, they couldn't really play football for the fourth and half of the third quarter.
Let me just say, I may be one of the few people who can empathize greatly with what you went through and how well you handled it. I've been there. You did great. And thanks for coming on with us, Evans. Good talking to you. Have a great off season. I guess it starts pretty quick here. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, always good to be with you guys. Enjoy all the news, and we'll be back in St. John Fisher before we know it.
Yep,
there you go.
We'll catch up with you then. Thanks, Evan.